Hi, my name is Mertel, and I'm Assistant Professor of Philosophy in the Department of International Studies at the American University of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. And in this video, I'm going to provide a brief summary of my article, Heidegger, Technology and Education, which appears in a special issue of the Journal of the Philosophy of Education, edited by David Backhurst. So my work in philosophy can be understood as contributing to the project of a critical theory of society, broadly construed. And as such, it is centrally animated by an emancipatory intent that requires that philosophy ultimately become concrete for the sake of disclosing or indicating certain possibilities of individual and collective emancipation and self-actualization. So I understand this article as contributing to this broader emancipatory enterprise. In part one of the paper, I take Martin Heidegger's philosophy of technology as a basic point of departure. And on this view, technology is not understood primarily at the empirical level, that is to say at the level of technical devices, but rather as an all-encompassing metaphysical worldview or outlook that understands reality in a particularly narrow way, namely as infinitely malleable, calculable, manipulable, optimizable, and so on, for the sake of certain pre-calculated, predetermined outcomes that can be objectively measured, observed, tested, and homogeneously reproduced. In part two of my paper, I examined the way in which the technological worldview manifests itself at the societal level in the form of what we might call a culture of achievement, a culture obsessed with measurable performances and outcomes. And this culture, in turn, manifests itself in the educational sphere in the form of a preoccupation with measurable learning outcomes that can be secured in advance through the proper application of certain educational technologies. And from this perspective, education is no longer conceived of as a dynamic, open-ended, highly individualized process of self-development and discovery, but rather as a linear, homogeneous, pre-planned series of steps along the ladder. And so in the final part of the paper, I provide the sketch of the contours of a critical theory of education that conceives of education as a potential site of emancipation and resistance to the aforementioned tendencies and challenges posed by the technological worldview. And I argue that such a program must ultimately be oriented towards the cultivation of the capacities constitutive of a moral articulacy. And such an aim can be best achieved through an educational program that is both multilingual and humanistic. And the basic thought behind this is that such an educational program will enable students to step outside the box of the immediate imperatives of functionality and optimality in order to disclose, articulate, and create alternative visions of society and of futures that are based on a more expansive and richer conception of reality, and therefore better capable of disclosing a richer array of possibilities for individual and collective freedom. So if this project has piqued your interest, I would encourage you to take a look at the full version that is available on the website of the Journal of the Philosophy of Education. And while you're there, I would also encourage you to take a look at the valuable contributions of my esteemed colleagues as well. Thank you.